Hey, Mike Pilcher coming to you again. Just wanted to continue on this wood grain panel that you remember we worked on the last video. Now what we want to do in this video is, I want to show you in more detail how to bring some fire up out of these cracks. So what I want to do first is show you just some of the materials. You know, we talked about the blender, the DBC blender. This is a PPG product. That's all I use. But this blender is going to be a must. This is something that you're going to have. A mixing cup. You're going to need to get some of these. These are cheap. They don't cost you much. You can get them down to your local PPG paint store. A mask, a respirator. Now these are the ones I use the most. I've got some really good suits and stuff that I use when I'm doing like a big overall clear coat project, but for the most part, this is what I use. These are disposable. This one here is part number 07193. This is a large. Works really good over the top of my suit and everything, so got to have one of those. Then remember I told you about paint filters. So when you go to get your paint, you know, a lot of people don't know this, but they'll give you these for free. Now this one here is an extra fine mesh. It's 190 microns. So you want to sift everything through these. You want to run all your paint, primers, everything through these filters. So like when I'm like here's my cart that I use. It's got all my paints and stuff on it. So like these bottles, I use these bottles. So what I'll do is before I put my paint in these bottles, I run everything through a screen into a mixing cup, and that's where I reduce it with my reducer, get it where I want it, and then I pour it right into here. And again, I run it right through the screen into here. So I'm actually screening it twice because I don't want anything in my airbrush other than paint. So I don't want to get those little particles in there and then have, you know, quite a mess, because you get the little particles and stuff in your airbrush. It's really hard to get it out, and it just makes for a huge mess. Now, on this panel, remember I talked to you about not being able to, if you lose your window, you can't go right over the top of this with paint. Well, you can, but when you go to clear it, the clear won't stay on it. That's why you got clears running all over the world that have got clear coat peeling off, because they put them in a corner somewhere in the factory, lost that window on that base coat, and you've got two options. You can either use blender and shoot over that base coat to reopen the pores before you start painting again, or put clear coat on it, whichever, or you can sand it. Well, we don't want to sand on top of artwork, or we don't want to sand on top of metallic, because it'll disturb the artwork or metallic, whichever it may be. So we use blender. So what I've done is I've sprayed blender on this panel, and I've just mixed it up in my airbrush. And actually I've got a little bottle right here. And this is reduced. And then I just put that in my airbrush and just spray this on this panel here. It reopens it, and now we can go back into to clear coating. So let me put this camera back on the stand. And let's get out of here. Now I've already went ahead and mixed up some chrome yellow in my airbrush. So I'm actually going to use the master airbrush, and we're going to use two different templates today. My favorite, which I've talked about quite a bit, is made by Art Tool, and this is actually the Eddie Young freehand airbrush template. This actually comes with a lot of different airbrush kits. If you buy a kit, this will come with a lot of them. The other art tool I'm going to use today is this one here. It's Wildfire number C. This is an art tool also. What we're going to do is we're going to get in these cracks, and we're going to bring fire up out of the cracks. And what I want to do is show you exactly how to do this. So I'll get you up here close so you can really see. So what I want the fire to kind of blow up like this, like it's going up because this panel is going to be sitting like this. So you just figure out the template you want to use, and then you're basically just going to kind of start in. And I've got, like I said, chrome yellow in here. I'm just going to kind of blow lightly. Okay, now here's how I do this. You can figure out how you want to do it. Remember, I always use these curves. I don't use inside of here. It never looks right. Use these outside curves is what you want to use. So I lay that template right up next to the panel. And then I take my airbrush and I just kind of go lightly right up around that template. Then I get on the other side of that curve, and I'll kind of actually bring them to a point, almost to a point. And I'll bring a little bit more of that yellow right down into that crack. It just makes a really nice looking. See, I don't want big, massive flames on this particular project here. I just want little whispers of flame coming up out of these cracks. So that's kind of how I'm arriving at this. Is very lightly on the curves of my template. You can also do freehand work, which I highly recommend. You don't just want to rely on just your template alone, because you're going to end up with it looking really, really stencily. And then we'll, out here in a few places, we'll bring just a few more. Like it's coming out from here. It's just kind of tracing up and kind of going out into there. We don't want to get carried away, because I just don't think it's going to look as good. We just get too much. I always like to use some freehand, like where the curves of my template are. I'll come around those curves, those edges, with freehand, just dagger strokes, a little light dagger stroke, getting up real close and just following that edge all the way around. And it gives it kind of a fuzzy line, and it makes it look more realistic. It don't look so cookie cutter, I like to call it. Don't look like a stencil. This is something here that, it does take practice. But keep practicing and keep working on it, because trust me, it's well worth practicing. Because this right here, if you're in this just for a hobby, that's fine. But if you're in this to actually get good enough to make some secondary income or even a main income, like I've been able to over the last 20 years, trust me, it's worth pursuing and getting good at it. Nothing good comes overnight, so just got to keep on practicing, keep on working at it, and you'll let me raise the camera here a little bit. You'll get good. The more practice you do, the better you get. The better you get, the more you're going to want to do. See, I'm bringing these right here, touching almost. So where I had the curve here, I stopped it right there, just kind of feathered it out. Now I'm bringing this side up next to that point. Kind of like that. It works really nice. And we'll bring a few little embers out into here. Basically what you're doing is you're shooting on one side, and then you find another curve and get over on the other side of it and use that. I don't like to use the same curve over and over because it looks cookie cutter. It'll look like a stencil. I like to switch it around, use different curves, and if it's a bigger project, you can use these bigger curves. We got that one pretty good. Let's move over here and let's do a few over here. You know, this fire is just a whole lot of fun to do. I do a lot of this fire. It's something that's in big demand, and there's so many ways to do it. I've done it. I just recently done a motorcycle, a custom bike that will be at the World of Wheels here next month, and this bike is the purple base. Now, this fire is so much better, so much easier to do on top of black, because where you're using your candies over the top of everything, you know, your black, the candies won't show up on the black, so you don't have to be so precise. But like on this purple bike, I had to be a lot more precise, and it took a little more time to do it than what it would if it would have been a solid black. But it turned out just absolutely incredible, and you can go to my main airbrushing site, airbrushinginkansascity.com, and you can see that bike. I believe it's on the front page of that site. But it's a very good looking bike. Okay, now let's just put maybe some more pieces of fire out in here. Just a few more places, and we'll switch over and go to some candy here. You know, one of my granddaughters, my oldest one, she'll be 9 in March, and she loves to do this. She's been airbrushing a little bit when she's out here with me, and she's starting to get pretty good at it. She's kind of figuring out the do's and the don'ts, and starting to get pretty good at it. Just one of them deals. If she was here all the time, she would be really good at it. What I'm doing is I'm just using these curves. That's how I'm getting it. That's all I'm using is these curves, blowing around one edge of the curve, and then I'm flipping it around to another side, and just blowing around that curve there. You just kind of keep doing that. And like I mentioned, I'm going around these edges where that stencil was, and just kind of follow them around, and just like a dagger stroke. It takes away some of that sharp edge, but it also don't look quite so stencily. Don't worry if you don't understand it right away. You hear I'm shooting on a curve. Just flip it around to the other side of that. You can get right up next to it to make kind of like a little point. it's just something that takes time. You know, this is one of those deals that's a paint that's going to take some time, and trust me, it's well worth sticking with. You know, just don't ever allow yourself to get frustrated, because it's very easy to do. I've learned the hard way that you just don't want to let yourself get frustrated, because all that's going to do is slow you down. You know, practice, practice, practice is what's going to move you to the next level. Okay, basically, that's enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch out this yellow. And I'm going to put candy orange. See, I've got my reducer. I've just dumped out the yellow, so I'm putting my reducer in, put my lid back on. You remember these have got a hole in the top for vent, so you put a rag over the top of that, give it a shake, and then you just, like I've got a little waste cup over here to the side that I just dump all my waste in. And then you can dump it in a bigger can. I've got like a 5-gallon can that thinner came in, and I use that to dump all my waste in, and you can dispose of it properly. Okay, so candy orange. This is called Orange Glow. Now, I'll have a complete, on the page that's marked, on the site that's marked supplies, colors. I'm going to have these exact colors of these candies on this page. So I have templates that I use, the numbers, where I picked them up at, where I got them, these candy colors, exact numbers, everything. Okay, so what I've got is my orange candy, and I'm just going to go over this yellow. You can see it already starting to take on a whole different color. You see, these candies is what really gives it the pop. Okay, I didn't mix up quite enough, so I'll put just a little bit more in there. So I put a little bit of candy in my cup. Now I've got my reducer, and I'm putting just a little bit of reducer in here to reduce it. I don't mix my colors exact in my bottles to what they're going to spray. I like them a little bit thicker, and then I can reduce them down to suit myself, because if I make them too thin, then when I start pouring this paint back in the bottles that I've got extra, then before long they get over reduced, and then you've got to add more paint. So I'd rather keep them a little thicker, then add more reducer in here, mix it right in here. See, I'm spraying this orange glow, I'm spraying it on this wood that we've done, and you can kind of see the difference it's making here. It's starting to really make this look like it's hot back in here, so like that wood in behind it is kind of hot. It just gives it some really, really cool effect. Okay. So that's pretty much it on this particular video on the fire and the wood. Now in the next video, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a different technique of wood. I'm going to show you a different technique of fire, and we're going to actually just do a fire panel too. So as we keep on going, I'm just going to show you different, because this wood, I mean, there's several different ways that I get the wood look. It depends on what wood I'm after. If I want it to look exactly like a piece of newer type board, you know, this one's like a barn board, so it's that old look. This is probably the best way to arrive at that look. But if we're talking more modern type wood, like pine or oak, then I've got some different techniques we're going to use. I'll show you how to do those step by step. We'll do a bigger area of fire. We'll get into a lot more detail with it. But I just kind of want to show you, finish up this wood panel, what we can do to really enhance it and make it look like an old piece of barn board, like there's something behind it that's burning. Another cool thing we could do is you could have something showing through, so like you could have the board like it's burnt out. So we could actually come in here and do like a burnout. You're seeing fire in behind it, massive amounts of heat and fire, and it's starting to creep through and come through that burn. So you'd have that burnt edge all the way around it, and you're seeing through on the other side. Very cool. We've done that a lot, and we'll actually do that in some of these videos. So hope this helps. Practice, practice, practice. We'll see you in the next video.